Judy King and I have known each other for approximately 20 years, despite both of us were obviously so young. And, well, at least she looks young. Okay, and over the years, I have collaborated with Judy on a series of projects, and she has written some versions of software that are based on LOL and some other things based on Unity or word strategy, and has been a clinician in many circumstances. Okay, today we are going to talk about saving time in the classroom for people using AAC. We'll get right here. AAC support in schools is labor intensive. How many of you have spent time selecting vocabulary or putting in special pages? Wow.
Hours and hours and hours.
Judy, would you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I work as an independent therapist, and I work with a lot of people, both in mainstream school and special school. And typically I'll have a teacher come to me saying, you know, we're doing this project on the Romans, could you put in some vocabulary? You think, well, I don't even know what words to put in, and actually just that research time, trying to research the vocabulary of what words to put in. And I know people have done it before, but people tend to be a little bit protective sometimes. Well, if I've done all of this research, you need to buy it to get the vocabulary. But it takes hours of programming and then designing your overlays and then making sure that person then has to learn what all the symbols mean anyway. So I'm sure you all have similar experiences.
Okay, well, stress is caused by the desire to meet the ever-changing, context-specific vocabulary demands of learning environments. And it doesn't matter whether that is inclusionary learning, when students are going through typical schooling, or whether they're in special education. The therapy staff, the teaching staff, and technical aides spend long hours in system design and redesign. How many have found it a burden? How many have been pleased with the actual independent communicative results? It speaks for itself. It's hard work and it doesn't get the results you're hoping for. Okay, emphasis on local and national standards seems to add to the challenge. Family and community support staff do not have the expertise or time to add pages for fringe, and that means extended vocabulary. I constantly walk into centers where people are in what we call CLAs in the United States, or community living arrangements, and I find a system that's been based upon the revolving vocabulary of context-specific vocabulary, and I'll find a trip to the zoo. I'll find a trip to the podiatrist for a nail cutting. What happens, okay, I think this brings on our second issue here, which is system disuse and abandonment. How many of you have ever seen students you've dealt with before have really outmoded vocabulary? Oh, I see that. Oh, yeah. Tell us.
Yeah. Only it's people who, you know, you actually come across as somebody perhaps new to you. I mean, I certainly discovered this, where there's actually pages and pages of vocabulary that is never used again. As I was saying about the Romans, or the Vikings, or perhaps some of the geography pages, or lots of these subject specific that haven't actually been used much in the classroom, apart from maybe just labelling that this is a Roman warrior or a Viking ship, but they haven't actually used it again ever since, and there are pages and pages in the systems of this.
Okay, even single switch low tech, like the Big Mac, communication aids often need vocabulary changes throughout the day. If you have a Big Mac, you don't want the words you have on it in the morning to be the words in the afternoon. Good morning, you know, must be replaced by lunch words. Do you see what I mean? In other words, there's constant redoing of vocabulary. Okay, clinical, social, and academic staff hesitate to prescribe communication aids, especially language-based PRC systems that I designed and that Tony's designed and that Judy has designed, because of lack of support. We're only going to be able to give a Big Mac because there's been lack of support. Big Mac is a single switch, or a step-by-step is a single switch. They can certainly be appropriate, but not when they're the choice because there's no support. Because these things all take so much effort. Now, what Judy and I are going to propose to you today is a way to end this labor-intensive search for new vocabulary and use high-frequency vocabulary, words that occur 0.05 times per thousand in speech, and that's about 400 words in English. And that's all it is. These words make up about 80% of what people actually say. We're going to show you how to replace zoo animals and hippopotamuses and Vikings and War of the Roses with plain English, and still teach and meet national standards. Okay. Central idea is to use core vocabulary instead of context-specific vocabulary to promote AAC, user participation in all learning situations. And it shifts the focus from referential to descriptive questions and answers for inclusion. A referential question is, what is this? Well, if you're asking this of an augmented communicator, he or she has to have the word pen, right? That's referential. And if you say, what do you do with this? You write. Write's a very common word. And you see what I mean? And so referential is, what's this? Pen. Descriptive is, what do you do with this? You write. And write is a word that occurs very frequently and is in that top group of words. Okay. And you can learn to select core words for commenting, directing, and describing, even in activity-based learning. And activity-based learning is where you go into a cooking class or when you're doing bed making, stuff like that. Okay, referential style questions and answers typically require replies with context-specific words. Who wrote David Copperfield? Charles Dickens. How many of you have put words like that into communication aids? Just all the time, yes. Descriptive style questions and answers often mention the targeted word, name, or concept and ask for information. Where did Charles Dickens get his ideas for David Copperfield? He got them growing up. Grow is one of those core words. Up is another one of those core words. Now what the teacher needs to do is give you Charles Dickens and David Copperfield, and for you to teach some appropriate descriptions about. So if the teacher asks any open-ended question about Charles Dickens or David Copperfield, you will have taught your student some very simple words that he or she can use to describe. Okay, let's go on. The use of descriptive questions and answers will allow for responses composed of high-frequency, reusable, common words. But don't all authors get their ideas from their own lives? What was special about his life? No money. You know, the fact that his father was in debtor's prison. Oh, I think that would make a wonderful key. You show a guy in jail and you have a little, his father was in debtor's prison. Now, that's a phrase that I use quite regularly. How many of you have said that 2 or 3 times today? So you see, but look what no money. How many times have you said no today, and how many times have you said money? You probably said money several times and no dozens of times. Okay.